So, welcome to this HealthFlix presentation. My name is Leigh Blashki and I'm a CAYT, a few other qualifications over the years going back, and I have the privilege at the moment to be part of the board of directors for the International Association of Yoga Therapists. As a past president of Yoga Australia, past secretary of the Australasian Association of Yoga Therapists, and have been teaching meditation and yoga for near on 44 years, I think. But currently have moved to the third stage of life in the yoga tradition we call Vanaprastha. It's a bit like a retirement, but you're still doing things, but you're just not really running the business as such. So this gives me time to really explore some interesting topics like Spanda. I'd like to thank Matt Taylor and the rest of the team at HealthFlix for their wonderful service in providing these freely available presentations. This is a wonderful service at this time when so many of us are spending more time at home, sheltering in place, etc. And I feel privileged to have been asked to offer this presentation today, which I hope you'll enjoy, and that hope you'll be able to put some of the practices into practice to assist you with your well-being. So, Spanda, it's a curious word. Spanda is a term that's been used for many, many centuries in yoga circles. And an exact translation of the word is really hard to find. I mean, there's lots of translations, but no unified or universally agreed upon translation. Some of the translations are words like vibration, pulse, a shimmer, the wave or pulse, like the pulse of consciousness. But the term that I like a lot is motive impulse, because that talks to really how we can connect with this subtle something, pulse, vibration, wave-like motion inside of ourselves. And it helps us to take our awareness internalized, where we have an internal locus of awareness, a term that's used quite a lot nowadays in health sciences, especially those involved in physical movement, particularly asana-based yoga, is interoception. So we have proprioception. If I move my hand, I'm aware my hand is now out there somewhere further away from my face. That's proprioception. And I know if I move it too close, I'll bump into my face. Interoception is I can feel something. I have an idea of what's happening in my arm, even if I don't know where it is in space. I have a great internal sense of the energies that are occurring. And so Spanda, for our purposes and for the purposes of a therapeutic approach to yoga, could be said to be that which precedes all movement, that comes out of intention and helps guide or helps create that impulse behind the movement of life force, or prana, as we call it in yoga. And sometimes analogies can be helpful. We know that light moves, sometimes wave, sometimes particle, etc. But the photon is the energetic something of light. And even prana, we think, is the subtlest of energies in the yoga terminology. Spanda sits behind prana. It is the spanda, which is that, if you like, it is when consciousness comes into being. That is the energetic vibration, motive impulse that causes the movement of prana. Prana is only prana when it is moving. And it is spanda that creates that. Now, for those of you who might be a little inclined to basic physics and understand a little bit of electricity, spanda is a bit like voltage. Prana is like the current. The current flows, but you need this potential, this higher potential voltage in order for current to flow. So spanda is operating all the time. We just aren't always aware of it because so much of our time we have an external locus of awareness. What will he or she think about me? Is that person going to be my dinner, or are they going to have me for dinner? So these are the things that are occupying our mind and stressing us much of the day. But if we bring ourselves into an internal locus of awareness, more of an interoceptive approach, we can start to feel this spanda. And we're going to do an exercise, or a few exercises shortly, to explore that. I'll invite you to do that along with me. So, what are some of the more obvious manifestations of spanda in our body? Well, the heartbeat. It is spanda, it is a pulse. What causes the heart to beat? Well, we can look at it in a physiological sense and talk about sinoatrial nodes and AV nodes and all those sorts of things. But there's something, what causes that to do it? What causes those nodes to all of a sudden spark off? Spanda. When we feel, sometimes you sit down and you just say, I can feel it tingling. What is that? Well, we can rationalize it as a person with some physiology understanding, saying, well, maybe that's the feeling of circulation in some smaller blood vessels. Maybe it is. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it is spanda. And it is a spanda that causes that tingling. Why is it that we all of a sudden feel a movement of something through a blood vessel, for example, at our fingertips, and we can say, I can feel a tingling, something, a shimmering, a scintillation, spanda. And somebody else might say, well, surely some nerve fibers have something to do with this. Yeah. What is causing those nerve fibers to experience that? What is causing those nerve fibers to send information, afferent and efferent information to the brain? Spanda. So the best way to understand spanda is to play around and have an experience of it. So today's practice is really having a little play around. This is not a yoga practice for this problem or that problem. It's simply, here is a way of exploring a tool, which is interoception, tuning in to this wonderful motive impulse that we call spanda, and seeing if it can help guide us. So I'm going to invite you now to, I'm just going to move my computer a little bit further away from me so you can see a little bit more of what I'm doing. I'm going to invite you now to just find yourself seated. And you can have your eyes open or closed for this minute or two, but just to tune in to what you might feel in your physical body. It might at first be the sensations of the sitting itself, the touch of your sitting bones or other parts on the surface that's providing its support. Perhaps the touch of your feet on the ground via socks or shoes if you have them on. Perhaps there's a touch on your back if your seat has an upright support. Just notice them, and what is the quality of that touch? If you had to go into one of those areas, let's say it's the feeling of the feet on the floor. If you went right into where those feet are touching the surface, how might you describe to yourself that sensation of touch? Now, in this moment, I'm feeling that as a little bit of a tingling in the balls of the feet, in the heels, the outer blade of each foot. It's almost like a shimmering. And what we're doing there is tuning in to Spanda. Spanda is operating. Even if we're just being still, it is still pulsing in and out, because it is a pulsing back and forward. It's wave-like. It doesn't just go one direction, whoosh, and out it goes and it's disappeared. Because it's not something that we lose. It's not even something we can measure. It's something that is somewhere between physical and energetic. So if we were to now try and sense Spanda in somewhere where it's not quite as obvious, where there's no perhaps gross contact. So for example, the tip of the nose. Take a moment and just tune in, feel the tip of the nose. Again, sometimes closing the eyes helps to deepen the focus. And notice what you feel there. Some people often describe it as a little sensation that makes them want to go and scratch the end of their nose. Very subtle. So what those two little exercises do is help us to become more sensitive to Spanda, to be able to tune in, so that when we want to use it more overtly through regular practice of just tuning into it, we can access that Spanda. Now, what does that do for us? What's the benefit of that? One of the primary benefits is when we want to move, and if we can tune in to the Spanda first, taking an interoceptive approach to our movement, we can better ensure that that movement is productive, it is economical, because we waste a lot of energy in using energies or movements or holdings or tensions, hypertonicities, when we don't need to. By tuning into Spanda, we can say, aha, I'm following the Spanda. If something else pops up, I can ignore that one, and I don't need to automatically go into it. We'll do this as a practice now, if you like. So I'm going to ask you to just think about raising one of your arms up overhead. Don't do it, just think about it. And if you were to close your eyes as you do this, just keep saying to yourself, I'm going to raise my arm up over my head. And notice that there might be just this little bit of early stages of something trying to move, almost like a little tension starting to occur. And at some stage, when that spanda has become been really well felt, you're quite aware of it. And then there's this energy. It's like the energy body. We call this the pranamaya kosha, or sheath in yoga. This energy sheath starts to want to move the arm. And without you even forcing it, just by allowing energy body to work with the spanda, the arm might just simply rise up. Mine's doing it. I can feel it. Just open my eyes and there it is. It's just rising up. As I do that, I can feel another spanda. And it's in the left side of my jaw. Because normally if I was to do this, my neck muscles, my trapezius and areas around my jaw might start to tighten. So I can say, right, jaw soft. No need to do anything there. I can relax the muscles that aren't needed, left side of the body, because my right arm is going up. And I can check in, is there anything happening in my feet? Is there any tension in my eyes? As the arm goes further and further up, and I can now feel different muscles wanting to come into play. As the upper arm goes just above the horizontal, as the deltoid muscles are no longer as effective, other muscles are coming into play, particularly the trapezius. So now I can feel just the one side of the body trapezius working and the other side is soft and relaxed. Now I'm going to say, I have an intention to lower that arm, not to drop it, to lower it slowly. And notice what happens when you do that. Other things want to come and tighten up. In this, what we call an eccentric phase of contraction of some of the muscles, belly and breathing wants to tighten. For me it does, maybe something else for you. Is there anything here that's unnecessary that I can let go of as the arm is slowly, ever so slowly coming down? And because it's taken a minute and a half or 2 minutes to raise the arm and to bring it down again, where was your attention if you were practicing that? Perhaps you might notice that at that moment you were fully present and that you were less concerned about the external things, that was an experience of being interoceptive, that you were less concerned about where the arm or hand was in space, but really tuned into the feelings of what was happening inside you. So tuning into Spanda can help us from unnecessary holding on and tension, which, as we know, drains a lot of energy. I've heard different figures, anything between 15 and 40% of the actual musculoskeletal energy that we use during the day is actually unnecessary hypotonicity, or too much holding on, too much tension within muscles that are just not necessary to that moment. So simply by conserving energy, we are supporting our health and our well-being. What if we have an area of our body that is stuck and we try and feel into it, but all we know is it just doesn't want to move? People say, I can't feel that area. You tell me, find something there, I can't find it. Well, there's an exercise using what we call Spanda, which basically means a pulsing movement to bring you in touch with this underlying motive impulse of Spanda. And it can be done by yourself on different body parts, and other people can do it for you. So, for example, a lovely way of working with a shoulder that is not moving as freely and there's not as much ability to sense the energies in the shoulder is to have somebody holding your hand, your arm, and basically giving your arm just this sort of gentle little shake up and down. And, so it's like a little shaking movement. And after about a minute of that, bits of energy start to be felt. And you can start to feel those little pings, little sparks of this motive impulse of Spandana. So I'm going to invite you to practice this. If you have no problems with your knees, this is a practice you might like to join me with. I'm going to move the screen down so you can see my leg, because I'd like you to see my leg is now ankle crossed over one leg, and you can see that I have one hand on the inner or medial aspect of this knee. Now, what I'm going to be doing, inviting you to do, is just create very little movements. Now, you might just, if you look really carefully in this screen, you'll just see like a little shaking. It's like somebody's got a nervous shaking in their leg. Well, this is me with my hand, leg relaxing, using that right hand. You can use both hands if you want, to just create these little mini pulses. They're going very fast. I'm guessing there's probably 6 to 10, maybe 6 to 8 pulses per second, very, very fast. And in doing this, what we're doing is we're sort of creating a pathway of awareness. And if I was to take my awareness now to my hip area, because this is what I'm trying to do, is loosen through that hip area a little bit, working with some of those muscles in the hip area. By doing this for about a minute, maybe a little bit more, by focusing on nothing else but this hip area, making sure not to tighten the shoulders while pulsing. If someone else does it for you, of course, that takes that issue away. And then when I stop, tuning in to the hip, what can be noticed? I notice a little warmth, and it's like there's something flowing, a little bit of a flowing feeling through the hip. Now, it's been shown anecdotally, no formal studies, but certainly with a number of my clients over the years and a few other people who work with this, that we can increase range of motion and reduce tightness in these joints, which allows the other practices of asana to be even more effective. Because for an asana to be truly effective, for a yoga posture to be effective, a person needs to be able to be aware of what's happening in those areas of the body that posture or asana is working upon. There are a large number of these pulsing movements that a person can do. There's a lot you can do yourself, and there are some that other people can certainly do for you. Another one which is really lovely is to actually sit on the floor with your legs stretched out. Now, I'm not going to do it, but if you were to sit on the floor at any time with your legs stretched out and your toes and the balls of your feet against a wall, so you're facing a wall, legs are against the wall, and your toes are simply doing this, pulsing against the wall. Maybe not that fast, at that speed, about 4 a second. And what happens is you get this sense of the whole body gets this sort of shake about it. Now, even with me sitting on the chair with the heels on the floor and the toes up, by just simply shaking the feet up and down, my feet are doing this at the moment. Let's see if I can show you that. Maybe not. Well, may not be able to succeed with that. My feet are going up and down. When I stop, all this energy surging up the legs. So this practice of Spanda is really good for improving interoceptive awareness and getting in touch with Spanda, which is often a little obscure. Now, another way that you can fine-tune and improve your sensitivity to Spanda is through the breath. Some of you may know there's a wonderful saying from one of the great yoga masters of the 20th century, Sri Krishnamacharya, who said, if you can breathe, you can practice yoga. And breath, of course, is a little more subtle than a lot of asanas, even though the body is moving. Of course, the diaphragm's moving, the secondary respiratory muscles of the torso are doing their work. And our internal diaphragms, our pelvic diaphragm particularly, and as well as our respiratory diaphragm, even as we talk about a subtle diaphragm in the throat, all these things come into play when we're breathing, if we're breathing effectively. By tuning in to how Spanda works with the breath, we can improve the quality of our breathing. Now, what do I mean by the quality of our breathing? In a yogic sense, the quality of the breathing is when a breath is smooth, long, and subtle. That's the classic definition given by the sage Patanjali around about 2,000 years ago. So that there's no tension with the breathing. And that the breath has an appropriate ratio of in-breath to out-breath according to the needs of the body at the time. Now, some of you are aware that with yoga practices, yoga breathing practices, we call pranayama, we have all different ratios we use, and we sometimes use different nostrils, and there's a range of things we can employ. And one of the tools that is really useful to improve the quality of breath, in other words, get it smooth, subtle, long, and for the body to naturally adapt the ratios and the type of breath to suit its physiological needs, just the way the heart does automatically, a healthy heart, is to use sound along with the breath. And first of all, the most subtle sound we can use is what we call ujjayi breathing. And ujjayi breathing is often described as a little sighing sound on the outward breath. And the way to learn this, some of you listening probably are well and truly practiced in this, but you've never done this before, what I would say to you is start by just taking a slow in breath and on the out breath going like a long ha on the out breath, either vocalized or just an aspirant sound. And after a couple of those, do the same thing but with the mouth closed. And then what you'll hear is like a little sighing sound at the back of your throat, or even lower in the throat. So it's just like a ha sound without the vocalization in the back of the throat with the lips closed. And then what happens is, as you do this ujjayi breathing, it's like a little sighing breath with the lips closed, over a period of time, the breath will naturally lengthen. If you don't try and over breathe in, just a gentle in-breath, the breath becomes more smooth and becomes more subtle. And if you've been doing that practice for the last few rounds, let yourself stop and notice where you might feel spanda. Do you just feel it perhaps in that throat area, or can you feel it right deep down into the torso? And maybe up into the head, just this little something, this shimmering, tingling, or maybe nothing at all, because this takes practice. But a way to make it even more overt, so that what I just showed you was a fairly subtle way of getting in tune with spanda through the breath. A more overt way is to use a practice in yoga we call Brahmari, or the humming bee breath. We're simply, with our lips closed, humming like a bumblebee. And I'll do 3 or 4 rounds. Feel welcome to join in and then to continue on for just maybe a total of 6 or 7 rounds. So gentle in-breath. A couple more rounds yourself. And then when you stop, notice, is there even more tingling? A sense of this spanda, this motive impulse, this curious, vibratory, scintillating quality inside, perhaps in the head, throat, torso, maybe even somewhere else. Okay, now, with this sense of greater sensitivity to and awareness of spanda, let's return to that first little exercise of moving that same arm. But remembering, don't go ahead and move it. Just allow it to be a natural following of the spanda and the energetic body. So take that awareness to that particular arm with the intention for it to raise up. And see whether there's a greater awareness of this subtle spanda, and maybe even a greater awareness of the whole energy body. And then at some stage, the arm will just naturally start to move up. Or it may not. For some people, it says, you know what, I'm happy just staying here, feeling the impulse. but not acting upon it. And notice that you might be even more able to detect other tensions that want to come in, and more able to let them go, because you recognize that little spark, that impulse that wants to tighten the shoulder inappropriately, or tighten a jaw, or clench at the belly, or be tight around the eyes. And when the arm feels ready to lower, again, tune in. What is that energetic? That Spanda motive impulse. And when the arm eventually does come to rest, tune in once again. And you might notice whether there's a sense of more aliveness in that arm and shoulder compared to the other side. More aware of the energy body and those little sparkling, scintillating impulses of Spanda. So I'd like to offer you the opportunity to either make a comment or ask a question. So I have a question already. Well, that was really quick. So, can Spanda be used when making decisions? Will my ability to feel, sense Spanda change with practice? Does it interfere or get too loud? Yes, these are great questions. Thank you. Spanda can be used when making decisions. In fact, it's said that Spanda precedes even thought and emotion. So it is the motive impulse behind everything. So take an example. If I'm not sure of something, I'm choosing between two things, I can simply focus upon one, feel what's happening in the body. Focus on the other one, what's happening. And over time, one becomes sensitive to these inner subtle messages. People often say, oh, I just knew. I decided on something, it was an inner knowing. Well, this gives another layer to that inner knowing by bringing something almost physiological to the table. The ability to feel and sense Spanda change with practice, absolutely. And with practicing Spanda, or Spanda sensitivity, whether just simply through movements and tuning into it, or through the practice of Spandana, the old adage is a little and often. Doing a little practice every day, for even a couple of minutes, is going to be really helpful. So you don't have to do a whole lot. You have to sit down for an hour once a month and do a workshop on Spanda, a little every day. The other part of that question was, can it interfere and get in the way? I've not found so, because when you tune into Spanda, then you simply follow it, follow what that motive impulse is with an action, whether that be a thought action or a feeling action or a physical movement action. And the Spanda has done its job, which then could lead to another question. If we don't respond, does it keep knocking on the door louder and louder? Well, the answer to that is yes and no. it's not that it's loud, it's just that it will be there, but what will happen is as soon as you do something else, it disappears. So it's not like it's going to keep annoying you because you didn't follow its direction, as it were. It's more that once it has done its job, because it's a wave, it pulses in and out. It pulses in and out. It's not there at you all the time. It just pulses in and out. And each time it pulses, it's there, it's gone, it's there, it's gone, it's there, it's gone. And so if we ignore it, that's fine. We've ignored it and we're none the wiser. If we tune into it, it's going to lead us into some nice places by moving more effectively, by making decisions that are more in tune with what is right for us. And what I've also found is I have an issue with my walking. I've got flat feet and I've got an ankle that's been locked since I was 16 because I never attended to it properly when I had an injury and all these things. So my walking is not wonderful. And I often feel this when I'm starting to walk. I feel this little something that's not right. I'll stop and I'll just tune into Spanda. What does it want me to do? And sometimes it'll want me to sort of sway my hips sideways. It'll say, you know what, you've got to do a little movement this way or that way. And next thing you know, I feel some little adjustment occurs. It gives the messages. So it's a wonderful friend. So please practice Spanda regularly and often, Spandana, and the tuning into Spanda. So before we close off, are there any more questions? So I'm looking at the question box and it looks like there probably isn't, and that's okay. Well, look, this has been a wonderful privilege and opportunity to share an area that I'm passionate about, this wonderful, subtle Spanda. This, of course, is being recorded because you can go back and listen again if you have been listening live. If you haven't been listening live, you are already listening to the recording. And there are lots of other fantastic, wonderful presentations brought to you by HealthFlix on their YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. I particularly enjoyed Larry Payne last week. There's so many wonderful ones. So a big thank you once again to Matthew Taylor and the whole HealthFlix team. Do visit them and enjoy every moment of every day. And please, in these trying times, stay absolutely safe. I'd like to finish by the way I often do when I talk with people, by saying, I honor the place in you where the entire universe resides, a place of peace, of truth, of love and light, where when you are in that place in you and I'm in that place in me, we are in the same place and we are one. Namaste and thank you.